G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Today we are talking buy lows and sell highs. Let's go.
Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Bryant to Shaq.
Not a game. We talking about practice.
LeBron James with no regard for human life. Anything's possible.
Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Curry for three. Wow! Unbelievable. Making it rain in New York. We the North are now we the champions.
Not the destination, it's the journey. Mamba out.
G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at BallBoysNBA and on Instagram at BallBoysFantasyBasketball. And as always, I'm joined by my good mate, Callum Mack. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mitch. Look, once again, week one is over, so we got some great perspectives to shoot.
Yeah, lots of information coming in. It's time to overreact, like I said on the last podcast. And take advantage of the people who are overreacting, and hopefully use that to win our league. So that's all what this show is to do today. We've got our top 5 buy lows and sell highs. So coming at you quick and fast, and we're going to discuss the kind of value that you should be looking for when either you're trying to buy low or the value you're trying to get back when you're trying to sell high. So hopefully you can maybe execute a trade. It won't always work. You might have some smarter GMs in your league, but it is worth a shot in some of these leagues and can potentially go a long way to you winning your fantasy season. Let's start right away with the buy lows, and a couple of big names on this list here. We're going to start with the biggest name on the list, James Harden. Talk to me about what's going on with James Harden. I think he can be bought low at the moment. Let me know, what are your thoughts on his value right now?
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit worried. I'm a bit worried about James Harden. The whole free throw percentage and the new rule that's being implemented has clearly affected him.
Yeah.
We've had 3 games now, and the man's only averaging 3 free throws a game. He's known to be a beast in that fantasy value. So it's definitely hurting. And he can feel it. His field goals down as well. I feel like he's getting a bit frustrated. I will say I think he will obviously bounce back.
Yeah.
I think there's just a bit of a transition period where he has to get used to this. But his value, I think, overall still will be affected a bit, and mainly in the free throw percentage, because that has more or less been his best stat with points for years now. So, and that point, look, I'm panicking a bit, and some owners out there definitely are.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, that's the whole big perception with him. It's like, oh, the free throws. He's not going to have his free throws now. And I think whilst I agree that it might take a dip, everyone's taking a dip. You know, a lot of players are shooting less free throws, except if your name's DeMar DeRozan. But everyone's shooting less free throws. So even if he shoots less, his value in that category will still be extremely high. I think at the moment I think the coach was saying that he's kind of like the poster child and he's getting picked on unfairly, which I agree with what I've seen so far. He's getting fouled still. I think more someone like a Trae Young is more the kind of type of player that I thought the rule was kind of made for, when they kind of jump into you or jump backwards and all those sort of things. James kind of like, he does the hook. He like hooks your arm in there with his other arm. So they're kind of picking on him a little bit. So I think he'll work it out. You know, he's a very smart player, and eventually that will increase his points. The field goal percentage at 36% is definitely going to come up. And the volume of the free throw line is still going to come up. He's still averaging 2.5 threes, 7 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.5 steals nearly, and a block per game. So those numbers are all still really high. It's literally just the free throws and points that are down at the moment, and the field goal percentage. And I think those are the things that you've got to look at when looking at a buy low. Is like, is this sustainable? Is this something that can reverse itself? And I think when you look at something as clearly like a 36% field goal percentage, that is something that is pretty sustainable. Are you there, Cal? I think we lost you for a second.
Yeah, no, you had me. Look, the field goal should definitely come up, and the points as well. So he's definitely on his way back. But I guess who could you trade him for if you feel like it could be a bit of a sneaky pick? Some people are a bit low. Do you have some names to throw out there?
I've got some names that I'll throw out there and see if you can get this sort of buy low. I think let me go to my list of names here. I think if you can throw like a second round player who's sort of doing well at the moment, I don't want to say, I think Paul George is probably the guy that sticks out to you, but I think you could even go lower than that. Maybe even someone like a LaMelo Ball might be someone that you could throw out there. He's sort of a hot player at the moment. Maybe you can try throw him out there. Maybe a Jimmy Butler might be someone that you can throw out there as well. Zach LaVine or a Jaylen Brown you might be able to throw out there. They've had some big games and scoring a lot of points. Those kind of names are the players that I'm sort of thinking that you should be able to get there. And I'm still pretty confident that James Harden will be a better player than them come the season's end.
Yeah. I had a lot of those names marked down. If you're a Jimmy Butler owner or a Zach LaVine owner, I definitely think it's worth throwing it out there because I guess most builds he still should fit you.
Yeah.
Just because of the defensive stuff and the assists, you're still probably going for those stats regardless. A bit of a flyer. I mean, look, I got Anthony Edwards on my team. I'm not sure if the James Harden owner will probably accept that, but Anthony Edwards 29th right now. He's killing it. 4 threes a game, 25 points per game. So it's definitely worth a flyer for something like that. But I do think that Jimmy Butler or the Zach LaVine is potentially tradable.
Yeah. I would definitely do that. I wouldn't do Paul George, for example, because I think that there is a possibility that Paul George is better than James Harden this year. So that's an example of someone who I wouldn't do. But yeah, those other names, I would definitely go for it. And of course, if you can trade Ja Morant or CJ McCollum or Miles Bridges, who's the 5th ranked player at the moment, then you do that. But I just don't think that that's going to happen. Like, he was still someone's first pick. He's often was going top 3. You're still going to have to pay up a fair bit for him, but people are panicking. People might be a bit worried with the free throws and the narrative and all that sort of stuff. Let's move on to the next guy that we're going to talk about. Another first rounder, Damian Lillard. What the hell is going on with Damian Lillard at the moment? He is playing like shit right now. He looks a little bit passive. He's not getting the threes, which is really weird to say. Only 2 threes in 3 games, which is just really strange to say for Damian Lillard. What are we doing with him? Are you worried, or what's going on with Damian Lillard?
I'm assuming it's just a bit of a cold spell. I'm not too sure if the guy will be panicking if you do own him, just because, well, we know he's better than this. He's always been consistent. There's no reason for him to change either. Yeah. The 0.7 3-pointers game like that has to come up. It's really the field goal. I think it's a small sample size. He'll bounce back. You could throw some trade offers like we were mentioning before for like a second rounder, third rounder. I think when the season's said and done, he'll still be that top 10 value.
Yeah, look, I agree. I'm not. I was kind of like, getting all excited, but I'm pretty confident he'll be right. I was listening to who was it? Josh Lloyd. I think he was saying that he's worried about Damian Lillard. I'm not as worried as what Josh is. I think he's going to be fine. I still think he's going to be a first round player. He's someone who, we've gotten the same thing from Damian Lillard season in, season out. He's really one of those models of consistency. So I'm not expecting too much different this year. It's too small of a sample size. There's been a game where he played 24 minutes because they blew the other team out by 30. Another game where they lost by 30, so he played 28 minutes to the Clippers. So there's 2 out of your 3 games. And in the first game, he put up 26 and 11. And in that game, he shot 33%. So there's just a few factors that are there that, with such a small sample size, I think he's going to be fine. So I would throw out a lot of those similar names that we talked about before. With maybe the exception of a LaMelo Ball, would you do if you were the Little owner, would you accept a LaMelo Ball for that trade, or if you were the Ball owner, would you want to offer that?
If you're the Ball owner, I definitely would. Yeah. Just because I think Dame obviously should bounce back. But if I'm the Lillard holder, look, small sample size, I'm still going to hold on to him for a bit longer for sure. So I think that trade will still be out there and say, like, even a month's time, like Dame Lillard has that reputation. That I think he can obviously hold through this bit longer. Yeah.
Is there anyone else you want to throw out there as a buy low sort of trade person that you'd want to float out there to see if you can get a bite for Lillard?
I think it's just similar players from what we mentioned before, like your Zach LaVine and your Jimmy Butlers as well. There's that round back.
Yeah. They do kind of, the James Harden, Lillard, they're similar ilks of players in terms of they fit that punt field goal percentage kind of team. So, yeah, pretty similar targets, I would say there. Let's talk about the next guy here, Michael Porter Jr. We referenced him in the previous podcast, talking about his teammate Will Barton, but he was someone that we were not high on in the preseason. He was actually in our bust videos. When we say bust, he was probably just going too high to where we wanted to go. I don't think he's going to be this bad, however. I think he is still getting himself acclimated to being the number 2 guy. The field goal percentage has been right down, and that was one of the main things that gave him value last year. He was an over 55% shooter from the field. He's down at 34 through the first few games this season. The shots are there. He's just not hitting them, and that will come around. So I'm pretty confident that he's going to be in that like top 50, top 40 sort of zone. I wouldn't go top 30. I don't think he's going to be that high. I never thought he was going to be that high. But that top 50 to top 45 is sort of where I value him. Are you thinking along the same sort of lines there, Cal?
Yeah, I am. Once again, small sample size. He should come back. Because his field goal has been atrocious. That's what he's known for. That's why he kind of was drafted. He was preseasoned about 22 or something pretty wild. I think the field goal should come up. In terms of trades, I was trying to find one who I'd potentially offer, and I ended up landing on Evan Mobley. He's been killing it so far. He's like a top 30 guy, 2 blocks a game. They are showcasing him in Cleveland. If you look at their stats, I mean, Michael Porter's outside the 100, Evan Mobley inside the top 30, and you got the upside there. I think there is a realm where you could potentially play that off.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Mobley's looked amazing. I think I would do that trade if I was the Mobley owner, and I would hope to get Michael Porter Jr. They're different types of players, so you're looking at getting more threes and points from a Michael Porter Jr., maybe giving up some blocks. So, there's different needs to take into account, but on the surface value sort of level, yeah, I would definitely think that that's a good one and potentially you might be able to get away with. The name I had out there was Miles Bridges, who's been absolutely dominating. I think that we're going to talk about him soon in our sell high video, but there's a few things that are going really, really well for Miles Bridges, and I think he's going to be a massive steal. Don't get me wrong. I think he has the potential to be a top 70, top 60 player, but I still would just much rather Michael Porter Jr. You probably could even go lower than Miles Bridges. Maybe someone like a Harrison Barnes might be someone that you go out there. I think Barnes is probably going to be worse than Bridges, so maybe if you can swing that. He's putting up 28 points a game and 5 threes at the moment. I think those type of players do a similar thing to Michael Porter Jr., but just not as good. And that kind of thing you might be able to get a good buy low for MPJ with those players.
Yeah, I think with MPJ as well, you have to realize, I feel like he was going so hard just because of probably the punt assist build, because he could carry a field goal so well. And those assists, which have always been shocking, he struggles to get over 1 a game. I think he's on 1.8 so far, so that could be a season high for him. But yeah, look, I think you'd have to keep that in mind. So some players that potentially you're trading you don't need. So even like a Christian Wood, who preseason was about 36. You look at Michael Porter's preseason of about 19. You could even flip a coin at this point. Christian Wood's putting up good.
Yeah, I think that's too much. I think that's too much. I think
it's too much as well. I think it is as well. But in terms, if you're trying to sell a Michael Porter Jr., if you are worried, maybe you could go for a Christian Wood on the other angle.
That'd be the cutoff point, I'd say. Yeah, I wouldn't want to accept anything like sort of worse than that, really, because I think. I mean, I was lower on Christian Wood to begin with, but he's doing well at the moment. But yeah, that's a good point. Let's go on to the next guy here that I've got written down. Clint Capela, who is quietly, if you didn't know, he's on a minutes limit at the moment because of, I believe it's a foot injury or something like that, or an Achilles soreness or something, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's right. He's been very quiet at the moment and is not putting up any points at the moment. I think he's averaging, what is he averaging? 8.7 points. Literally hasn't hit a free throw yet this season, which we know is not his thing. But just the minutes are down at 24, 40. And I think if fantasy managers weren't aware, you might be able to snag him and maybe convince them that, they're playing more, John Collins at center or something like that. He's going to have a down year, but I think he's going to ramp it up pretty soon.
Yeah, look, I kind of agree. I actually would be a bit worried, though, if I do own him, because you got Okongwu coming back. I think he'll kind of demand some minutes here and there. So I still would be a little bit worried about Clint.
I don't think Okongwu is due back for a while, though. I think he's out for maybe even the majority of the season, if I remember correctly. I'll have to fact check that, but I wasn't really... Okay,
I didn't realize that was that bad. I've had him on my watch list to when he does come back. But
I'll have to check that one.
There's no reason to worry about that then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking at his rank 110 on fantasy. That's pretty rough. 0% for free throw.
Yeah. The ranking's always going to be affected by the free throw percentage. So obviously, if you're trading for him, you're punting that category. And like we said, last year he was the 4th ranked player in a punt free throw percentage build. So do keep that in mind. He's going to block your shots. He's going to get you. He's still averaging 11.7 rebounds in 24 minutes a night, and still getting you nearly 2 blocks a game. The field goal percentage will lift in value when the amount of shots goes up, when the minutes go up as well. And he's going to get close to like 14 rebounds. The blocks are going to go over 2 a game. He's going to get all the same kind of stuff as soon as those minutes come back up. So don't look at his ranking. Look at what he's doing, and it's going to be the exact same as what we've expected the last couple of years. Who would you be looking to purchase Clint Capela with? What kind of value range are you sort of targeting at this point?
Is it too much of a stretch to try and sell Steven Adams?
Oh,
is it too much of a stretch? Because that man's been on fire.
Yeah, well, he's ranked 31, so if you've got someone who's really big
and
into ranking,
free throw.
Yeah,
so it does make sense.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of play. Look, if you can do it, 100%, give it a shot. I don't know if it'll be successful, but yeah, sure. I definitely wouldn't do it if I was the owner of Clint Capela.
Did you have a more realistic option, maybe?
Let me have a look here. I liked the Evan Mobley option that you had from before. I think that he's someone who you could definitely do. You still keep your blocks there, but the field goal percentage is going to be better. The rebounds, I think, is going to be better with Clint Capela, so you get a boost in those categories. We can have a look at
Teenage Mutant Ninja Poeltl.
Yes.
Potentially punts the 3 throws, but he's been killing it so far, man.
He's
16,
probably
11 and 4, 1 steal, 1.3 blocks. I mean, look, small sample size, but goddamn, 72% from the field.
Yeah.
He's having a pretty monster season so far.
Yeah, I think that's almost a bit too much. I think that there's a world where those two, Poeltl ranks higher than Clint Capela. I think that's too close in value. But I wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. I thought, yeah, sure, sign me up for that trade. But Poeltl's getting more minutes this season than I expected, and I think that's going to continue. Maybe someone like a Wendell Carter Jr. or a Mo Bamba, someone like that. I think you can make that trade. I think if you're looking at big guys, I think those are players that I would definitely be happy to trade for Clint Capela. And I think you could maybe convince them that Mo Bamba's a bit of a hype guy at the moment. So, ride that narrative and see if you can get a trade done. Who else am I trying to think of? Maybe someone like... I'm trying to think of a non-big. Maybe someone like, I don't know, a completely different thing would be like a Tyler Hero or someone like that. Perhaps he's been having a lot of big games. He's a bit of a fun name to throw out there. Those kind of players, is that kind of range is what you're looking for. Someone who would normally be considered like an 80 to 100 sort of type. That's the kind of player that I'd be trying to throw out there. Maybe a 50 to 75 if there's no scope of them actually doing better than that. That's the kind of player that I'd be trying to throw out there.
Yep, fair enough. I agree.
All right, let's go on to the last buy low, and it is D'Angelo Russell, someone who I've got a lot of stock in this year. He's frustrating me, but I think he's a buy low opportunity because there's no one outside of him, Anthony Edwards, and Karl Anthony Towns who's taking shots in this team, and he's taking the shots. He's just not hitting them, and he's putting up a shit ton of turnovers, which affects his rank. We kind of knew that going into it, but I think you can get D'Lo somewhat cheap at the moment. He's the 194th ranked player through his games, averaging 14, 4, and 4 with a steal, 2.5 threes, but the field goal percentage at 31%. That's definitely going to come up.
Yeah, that has to. And even the threes, I expect them to have 3 a game, so that they should definitely both come up. I think there's just maybe a bit of a growing pain. He didn't get a whole lot of time with Cat last season, so I think they're still getting to get to know each other. They're both injured a fair bit. Yeah. And you got the whole Anthony Edwards integrating him. He's put on 25 points a game, so to some degree, I guess D'Lo's taking a bit of a step back to him. And I would expect his assists definitely to come up. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends on a 7.5 assists per game, which is super elite. So right now he's ranked at 196. I think it's pretty bad. I have a bit of stock in him as well. I think he will be a bit more realistic of his preseason rank of 60. I think that did fit around there pretty comfortably. Yeah,
definitely. I would definitely be happy to. A player that I sort of thought out that you could trade for him that I think would be really good would be someone like a Spencer Dinwiddie sort of type. I think, although, maybe that's probably even a bit too much, but a Spencer Dinwiddie type or worse would be sort of where I'm looking at. Who did you sort of have in mind as a D'Angelo Russell sort of trade target?
I'd like it as a bit of a sell high for the sell low to go with a Tyler Hero, just because he has been so hot recently. I'd like to say, look, as a Heat fan, I love it. I want to make sure if this is maintainable, it's amazing, but I don't think it is. Sadly, 23 points a game, pretty wild. About 7 rebounds, 5 assists. I think that could be a good target because over the course of the season, D'Lo with the assists could be a better option there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that is someone who I would definitely be happy to trade for D'Angelo Russell. I'll throw another few guards out there. Someone like a Derrick Rose. People always seem to love a bit of Derrick Rose. Tim Hardaway Jr. I would definitely do so. Even someone like Seth Curry's ranked 69th and he's had a few big games. Had a quiet one last one, so it might be a bit harder now. But those sort of type of players I would very happily trade for a D'Angelo Russell. All right. Let's move away from buy lows and go into our sell highs now. Couple of really obvious names here. Just go through a few of them. We're starting at the top here with Julius Randle, who I think is a pretty clear sell high. What's he been ranked at the moment so far? He is ranked, I've got it in front of me, 10th overall in the season, putting up 37.5 minutes a game. The big red flag here is he's averaging 1.8 blocks per game. That is not going to continue. He is not a shot blocker, and that is boosting his value a fair amount. Although I am encouraged to see his assists are still really high. It was something that I was worried about with Kemba coming to the team. I don't necessarily think that that's coming down from last year, so I'm viewing him basically what he was last year, but that's not the 10th ranked player. Yeah, I totally agree. That's the blocks. It's glaring. I think he averaged about half a block a game over the course of last season on huge minutes. We know Tibbs plays them. But yeah, 25, 11, 6.5 assists. It's good to see the assists are still there. Kemba weirdly seems to have some kind of minutes cap. I don't know. They're definitely managing his minutes, I think, and putting D-Rose in there a fair bit. Maybe it's a Tips thing, but if you got Randle, I know he kind of fit that punt block build. So right now he's probably not even giving you much value there because you might be losing that category regardless, but still a pretty good, you'd be pretty happy with your return so far. Yeah, and to give you some names, look, it's tough to give you some names, but if you can sell them for anyone who's like a first round player, I would be doing so. So someone like Kevin Durant or someone like Joel Embiid. Maybe would you do him for Anthony Davis? That was the next name I was going to say. Anthony Davis. It depends on your build because chances are you got him for a punt block build. So maybe you would rather Julius Randle than an Anthony Davis. Look, Davis is probably still going to give you more. Would he give you more points? Maybe not. Probably not. No, I probably wouldn't trade Julius Randle for Anthony Davis. It's close. I think they're very similar players, so you're not really even getting that much. I think it's more for a fit of your team. Yeah. Kind of thing. Maybe your late rounders, you picked up a Mo Bamba as a flyer and you picked up a Gafford because there and you are competitive in blocks and you decide to go that route. Yeah. I think there's not a whole lot of options, but I think the names that stand out to me are, Embiid, Durant, those sort of level of players. Would not trade him for a Vucevic or a Sabonis or anything like that. They're too similar. Those two names that I mentioned before would be what I would be going for. Or if you did want to make a pivot and go for the blocks, then you could try an Anthony Davis. And you might be able to pull that off. All right, let's go on to the next sell high guy. He's everyone's favorite guy in the moment, and he's been playing very impressively. It's Ja Morant. What are your thoughts on Ja at the moment, Cal? He's putting up buckets. I was sleeping on Ja, man. I regret it. I think this team is just built around him a lot better. I was sleeping on Memphis in general. I don't know what it was. I knew Jaren Jackson Jr. was going to have a big season. And his fantasy-wise has been awesome as well. It's like 2.3 blocks with 2.3 threes. So, both the Memphis kids are killing it. 8th overall rank on Yahoo for Ja Morant. He obviously is boosted by that 40 and 10 game he did have with 5 threes. I think that's one of his fantasy stats that really could come up. So you'd like to think that he sustains a good 2.5. The 1.3 steals is good. You obviously have to realize the turnovers will be there. They run the ball through him so often that he does kind of fit that punt regardless. But right now, 8th overall. He was probably drafted in the 3rd round, I think, most commonly. No, I think he was even later than that. You reckon he was dropping in the 4th or 5th? His preseason rank was 52. Preseason's 52. Yeah.
And that's obviously looking pretty low right now because I think this is somewhat sustainable. I think this team, like maybe he's just turned it on. Everyone knows third-year players, usually that's when they break out, and it looks like it's happening for Ja.
Look, I'll tell you what's not sustainable. 58% from the field. That's not sustainable. He's not going to do that for the season. And that's going to drop his value a fair bit. It's going to drop his points. I'm also skeptical. So the big thing about Ja, he's an excellent player. He's traditionally been a horrible fantasy player because he doesn't get steals. He doesn't shoot that many threes. He gets low rebounds. His percentages and turnovers were bad. Now, it would be very unlikely, although possible, that he improves every single one of those things in 1 year. I think that he might be maybe a slightly better three-point shooter. I'm encouraged by the free throws at 81% at 7 attempts. That's very encouraging. The steals, I'm still skeptical of. And obviously the field goal percentage I think is going to come down, although probably still going to be better than last year. So he's going to make a massive jump from last year. But last year he was, I think, well outside the top 100 players. So I think he's probably more of a top, it's hard to say, a top 40 player than like this high. And I think a lot of people are getting really excited with him because he's put up some awesome lines. But if you can get him for, someone like a Zach LaVine or someone like a Fred VanVleet or a LaMelo Ball or any of these guards, a Damian Lillard, if you can make that trade, I would 100% do it because just from like historical seasons, his fantasy game just doesn't translate as well as those other guys.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I do agree to bits and pieces of it. I understand that your field goal will come down. He's not going to be the 8th ranked player, 100%. No. But I could see him actually getting, I think it's the field goal and the free throw percentage. If he can maintain, he's not going to shoot 58% from the field, but if he gets close to 50, which he could be because, look, I think he is just that crafty. I think once again, it's switched on for him. It may be in the high 40s, but I think that if that's lifted, the steals will probably come down as well. Turnovers will be there. He could be in certain builds if you build him right. If you don't care about the turnovers, he could be kind of like maybe even top 30.
Yeah, look, if in certain punt builds, he definitely improves substantially. So he definitely does have value. The points and assists are extremely valuable. They're two of the hardest things to find in fantasy. So, he definitely does have value from that point, regardless if all those things come back to earth. But I just think that there's such a hype around him at the moment that you could probably get someone really, really valuable for Ja if you wanted to. Some of those big names that I threw out there, like Damian Lillard.
Yeah, I like him for LaVine. I like him for Zach LaVine. I think over the course of the season, Zach, he's just so consistent. Yeah. Really good. He doesn't hurt you at all. That's why I love Zach LaVine as well. Obviously, the defense isn't quite there, but otherwise, very solid player.
Yeah, much better in the both percentages, lower turnovers, all those sort of things. So especially even in a roto league, I would make that swap pretty quickly. But there's no doubt he's probably going to beat what I thought he was going to do this season. He's definitely doing better than I expected this season, so far at least, and I think probably for the rest of the season. Let's move on to the next sell high, and it's Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon, I feel like he was on this list last year, so he just seems to start pretty hot. Currently the 24th ranked player. But I tell you what's coming down definitely, Callum. It's the 40.5 minutes that he's playing at the moment. Like we said before in the previous podcast, these Indiana Pacers guys are just playing a whole ton of minutes. And look, they've had a couple of overtime games, so that's boosting his value, I think, at the moment. And I think that that's going to come down.
Yeah, I think it was actually their first 3 games of the season were all overtime games, which is pretty wild. That's crazy. Sure that probably is a record somewhere.
Yeah.
Look, 25 points, 7.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists. Wild. We know the defensive stats aren't there. So you would expect everything to take a hit just because of the minutes. If he goes down the 32 minutes game, which I think is pretty reasonable, that's still, that's still a good, 20% of his minutes that he's right now, that's going to get hit. So if you take 20% off his stats, he's kind of back to where he normally was ranked at 67. So I think as an owner, yeah, sure, you definitely could throw a trade out there. But even his field goal hasn't been that good. That should be hurting you a bit. I guess there's more of a ceiling for that. But otherwise, it's obviously the minutes. It's just the overtime games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, like those minutes are definitely going to come down. He's also a bit of an injury risk as well, because I think he's had a few injuries in a few seasons, and when he's playing this high minutes, I do worry about that a little bit. So I would happily accept a trade for like a Fred VanVleet or someone like of that nature. Maybe like a Donovan Mitchell would be someone who I would accept a trade easily for. Who's some other names I can throw out there, like a Chris Paul or someone like that. These kind of like second to third round guards that were in that kind of area. Lonzo Ball, although Lonzo's been killing it as well, you probably can't do that trade. Those kind of level of players. Any sort of names that you want to throw out there specifically for Brogdon?
Yeah, so what I had on my list, I'm pretty high on this season was DeJounte Murray. He had a big game today, and I think he's got a lot more due in him. So if you can make that trade, I would prefer DeJounte Murray on my team. Right now, he's ranked at 44. I think that should definitely go up just with the steals. Steals are elite. Assists are awesome, and that can't hurt your team.
Yeah, and he's a good field goal percentage guy from the point guard position, which is hard to find.
And right now he's only shooting 37% from the field as well. So even with his rank, it's got to come up.
Yeah, that definitely will come up. So I know I like that suggestion there. So any of those guys, I would be very happy to make that swap. Let's move on to the last guy here that we're going to talk about, and it is Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. I did not see this coming. I can tell you that much.
Are you trading him for Kevin Durant? Is the first question.
Yes, I would do that trade. But man, this guy, what the hell? Like, he is the 5th ranked player this season. 35 minutes a game, putting up 25, 8.5, 2.3 steals, 53%, 94%. Just absolutely braining it right now. This can't keep up, Cal. Although he's going to smash the ADP of 87, I think. I think he's probably a top 70 at least, top 65 player. He's definitely looking like a MIP candidate.
He is. He looks like the MIP candidate. I'm really excited for Charlotte because this man is really awesome to watch, and he's playing with LaMelo Ball. So last season, the Hornets were my favorite team. They are again this season. This is huge for Miles Bridges. The biggest stat I think that you should be looking at is field goal attempted, 17.5. So they're obviously running it through him. And that's my biggest surprise because he's getting 2.5 threes a game on really good field goals. He's such a big dunker. He runs the court with LaMelo. Yeah. He's going to have a lot of open dunks regardless. So his field goal, I think, will always be good, whatever he's doing. And the steals are coming up. Like,
those steals are coming.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of keen to hold on to him. I want to see where this takes me because this is pretty wild so far. If you can sell him for someone in any of the top 3 rounds, you do it.
Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about selling high. 60? Yeah, we're talking about selling high.
You got to sell high.
Yeah. When I say
in the top 3 rounds, I probably would do it.
Yeah. When I say I see him as like a top 70, top 65 player, that doesn't mean that I'm accepting someone at 50th. Like, I want to try and get good fucking value. Like, he could be better than that. So you're aiming for top 35. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of level you're aiming for because this guy's absolutely killing it right now. And there are things that make you kind of believe that it's somewhat sustainable. I hate to say it, but the things that I think are going to come down, I think his points are going to come down. He's not going to average 25 a game. He's not going to average 2.3 steals a game.
Yeah.
The percentage are probably actually not too far away from the truth, to be honest. He's a very efficient guy in both percentages, and he's not a big turnover guy, so that's happening. The rebounds, I think, are going to be fine. So apart from the steals and the points, yeah, I can definitely see everything else basically maintaining. But you've got someone like Terry Rozier who's still got to come back into the mix. He's only played 23 minutes this entire season, so he's going to take away some usage. We've had PJ Washington miss a couple of games, so there's someone else where maybe the minutes come down a touch. But he's going to be a beast this year in fantasy. So if you drafted him, congratulations. Don't just throw him away because he's on this video. But if you can get someone, I don't know, like anyone in the top 3 rounds, like if you can get, what do you think? Would you do a OG Anunoby for a Bridges trade?
I know you're high on OG. Yeah. So I know you wouldn't. I know you definitely wouldn't. I probably wouldn't quite yet either. We know that OG, I think he's just locked in for a better role. You mentioned it before. Terry Rozier should take some shots away from him, surely. Some guys I had on my list was Anthony Edwards, who's more of a 3rd, 4th rounder.
Yeah.
I think the points and Anthony Edwards will be there the whole season, like 25 points per game. I think that's pretty accurate. That's what Miles Bridges is putting up with defensive stats. So maybe there's an argument for that. I think Anthony Edwards will be more reliable. Another guy I had on my list was Toby Harris. If you just want all reliable, yes, it's boring, but I think over the course of the season, Toby Harris will give you a bit more than what Bridges is giving you, especially with
I actually think that Bridges
is out.
I think Bridges and Toby Harris are like pretty similar players, to be honest. Like if you think about it,
they are. But I think with Simmons out, that Toby Harris has more of a ceiling right now.
Yeah, I would agree. He's probably safer as well. Yeah, there is a world I do see that Bridges beats out Harris. So for me, I'm aiming even higher than that. Just because, like we said, we broke it down. Like there's only 2 categories here that I see dropping off: points and steals. Everything else you look at, like I think that's just going to be what he is.
I'll say Toby Harris was 41st right now, and he's 43rd in preseason.
Yeah,
so I still think for someone who's ranked in 87, 3 games in,
yeah,
you'd be pretty happy with that. Just because it's a similar player, and you should just get a buffer.
Yeah. Yeah, look, you can do that. I'm just saying that, like, if you're a believer, then I would try go higher. I would try go higher. Go for someone like a Jaylen Brown or a Zach LaVine or a Jimmy Butler or something like that. Like some of these guys, they're big names. I know.
You're asking for a lot, Mitch.
I know, but this guy's the 5th ranked player and he's killing it. And like, there's a lot of good signs here. Anthony Edwards, I like your suggestion there. Look, sometimes that more than likely not going to work, but that's the point of these sell highs. There are a lot of like managers who are panicking out there with a few guys. I think the OG Anunoby is like the line where I would go, okay, I would take OG over Bridges and feel good about it. But anything sort of after that, I'm sort of like, Toby Harris, I don't know. I probably wouldn't do it. I'd keep Bridges.
What about it? Here we go. Would you shock the world with a James Harden for Miles Bridges trade?
Obviously, I would rather James Harden, but I don't necessarily think you're going to be able to do that. But if you can, if someone can, please do it. Comment on it, and we'll put it up on social media and tell everyone that's possible. So if you can do something like that, please let us know, and we'd happily spread the word and let everyone know that it is possible. Alrighty, that might do it for us today, guys. Let us know down in the comments anyone else who you are frustrated in and you're worried if you should sell them or if you should buy low on a particular player, what we think about everyone's value. Let us know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up. Let's get this video to 150 likes. That's our target. 150 likes, guys. See if we can do it, and we'll catch you guys next time. Laters.